Have you ever seen a bird hold a grudge for years? Not days, not weeks, years. Imagine walking through a park when a crow suddenly starts screaming at you from a tree. Then another joins, and another. Soon, an entire flock seems to know exactly who you are. The strange part? You've never seen these birds before. Or at least, that's what you think. Scientists discovered something so shocking that it forced them to rethink what intelligence really means. These black-feathered birds can recognize human faces, remember them for years, teach that information to other crows, solve complex puzzles, build tools, and even plan ahead for the future. Some researchers have compared certain aspects of their intelligence to that of primates. But how did a bird become one of the smartest creatures on Earth? And what other secrets are hidden behind those dark eyes? Because the deeper scientists looked into the world of crows, the stranger it became. For centuries, crows have been surrounded by mystery.
Ancient civilizations saw them as messengers, tricksters, prophets, or symbols of hidden knowledge. Their glossy black feathers, piercing calls, and uncanny behavior made them seem almost supernatural. Yet the truth might be even more fascinating. A crow's brain is tiny compared to a human's. In fact, if you held one in your hand, it wouldn't seem particularly impressive. But appearances can be deceiving. When neuroscientists began studying crow brains in detail, they found something remarkable. Although bird brains are structured differently from mammal brains, crows possess an incredibly dense concentration of neurons packed into critical regions responsible for complex thinking. In some ways, their brains operate like highly optimized biological computers. And the evidence of that intelligence appears almost everywhere. Take memory, for example. Most animals remember food locations or danger zones. Crows do something far more advanced. In one famous experiment, researchers wore unusual masks while capturing and briefly handling wild crows. The birds became agitated and learned to associate the mask with danger. Nothing surprising there. But years later, scientists returned wearing those same masks. The crows immediately recognized them. Not only that, birds that had never encountered the masked researchers before also began reacting aggressively. The information had somehow spread. The original crows had effectively warned others. Think about what that means. A bird not only remembered a specific human face for years, but also communicated that knowledge to its community.
The researchers weren't just dealing with memory anymore. They were witnessing social intelligence. And this was only the beginning. Because crows don't simply survive in their environment. They actively manipulate it. Imagine finding food trapped inside a narrow tube. Your fingers can't reach it. You can't tip the tube over. The reward is visible but inaccessible. Most animals would eventually give up. A crow doesn't. Instead, it looks around for a solution. In laboratory tests, crows have bent wires into hooks, dropped stones into containers to raise water levels, and used sticks to retrieve food from difficult places. Some species even manufacture specialized tools in the wild. They carefully select branches, trim them, modify them, and create instruments designed for specific tasks. This is something once believed to be almost exclusive to humans and a handful of primates. Yet here was a bird doing it naturally. And the most incredible part is still ahead. Because using tools is impressive. Understanding how tools work is something entirely different. Researchers created puzzle challenges that required multiple steps. The crow couldn't simply stumble into success. It had to understand a sequence. Use one tool to obtain another tool, then use that second tool to access the final reward. To solve the problem, the bird had to think several moves ahead, like a chess player planning future turns. And unbelievably, many of them succeeded. Scientists watched in amazement as crows analyzed situations, experimented with solutions, learned from mistakes, and adapted their strategies. These weren't random actions. They were signs of genuine problem-solving ability. But if you think that's impressive, wait until you discover what happened when researchers tested whether crows could think about the future. Because the answer revealed something that few people would ever expect from a bird.
Scientists have long believed that one of the defining traits of advanced intelligence is the ability to think beyond the present moment. Not simply reacting to what's happening now, but preparing for something that hasn't happened yet. Humans do it every day. We save money for future problems. We pack an umbrella before it rains. We make plans for next week, next month, even next year. For a long time, researchers assumed this kind of future planning belonged almost exclusively to humans and a small group of highly intelligent mammals. Then, crows entered the conversation. In a series of remarkable experiments, scientists presented crows with situations where making the right choice in the present would create a reward much later. The birds had to resist immediate temptations. They had to remember information. And they had to anticipate future events. Again and again, many of them succeeded. One crow would select a specific tool, ignore more attractive options, and keep it for hours because it understood that the tool would become useful later. Pause for a moment and think about that. The bird wasn't reacting. The bird was planning. And suddenly, the gap between humans and animals seemed a little smaller than anyone expected. But the surprises didn't stop there. Because intelligence isn't only about solving puzzles, it's also about understanding other minds. This is where the story becomes even more fascinating. In the wild, crows constantly compete for food.
When a crow hides food for later, another crow might be watching. If the observer learns the hiding spot, the food could be stolen. At first glance, this sounds like a simple survival problem. But what happens next is astonishing. Researchers discovered that crows sometimes return later and move their hidden food to a completely different location. Why? Because they suspect another crow may have seen the original hiding place. Think about the mental process involved. The crow appears to understand that another individual possesses information. It behaves as if it is considering another creature's perspective. That level of social awareness was once thought to be extraordinarily rare in the animal kingdom. Yet crows demonstrate it naturally. And the deeper scientists investigated, the more examples emerged. Some crows have been observed using traffic to crack hard nuts. The birds place the nuts on busy roads and wait. Passing vehicles crush the shells. When traffic lights stop the cars, the crows calmly walk onto the street, collect the food, and leave before traffic resumes. Imagine the chain of understanding required. Recognizing vehicles, understanding timing, learning traffic patterns, waiting for safe opportunities, adapting behavior to human-made environments. It's a level of flexibility that feels almost unbelievable. And perhaps that's because crows are not merely surviving alongside humans. They're learning from us.
In cities around the world, these birds have become masters of adaptation. They watch. They observe. They remember. Every day, they gather information about the strange species that dominates the planet. Us. Which brings us back to one of the most unsettling discoveries ever made. The facial recognition experiments didn't end after a few months. Researchers continued monitoring the birds year after year. The results were extraordinary. Some crows remembered specific human faces for many years. Not only did they retain the memory, they passed the information through generations. Young birds that had never experienced the original event still reacted negatively toward the recognized face. Somehow, knowledge had spread through the community. Imagine becoming famous among crows without realizing it. Imagine one unpleasant interaction causing birds across an entire area to remember you. Suddenly, those watchful eyes perched on rooftops seem a little different, a little more
aware, a little more observant, and perhaps a little more intelligent than we ever imagined. But here is the question that makes scientists pause. Why did intelligence evolve this far in a bird? After all, crows don't build cities. They don't write books. They don't launch spacecraft. Yet evolution pushed them toward remarkable cognitive abilities. The answer may lie in the challenges they face. Crows live in constantly changing environments. Food sources move. Predators adapt. Competitors steal resources. Humans reshape landscapes. To survive, flexibility became more valuable than brute strength. Instead of powerful claws or enormous size, crows evolved something else. A mind capable of learning. A mind capable of remembering.
A mind capable of solving problems no instinct could predict. And perhaps that is what makes them so fascinating. Because when we look at a crow, we are seeing a completely different path to intelligence. A separate experiment conducted by nature itself. One that arrived at surprisingly similar results. The more we study these birds, the more they challenge our assumptions about consciousness, memory, learning, and even what it means to be intelligent. For generations, humans believed intelligence followed a ladder. At the top stood us. Everything else existed somewhere below. But modern science paints a different picture. Not a ladder, a forest. Countless branches exploring different ways of understanding the world. And among those branches, perched quietly in the shadows, sits a black bird that many people overlook every day. Watching, learning, remembering. Perhaps the next time you hear a crow calling from a distant tree, or notice one staring at you from a rooftop, you'll see it differently. Because behind those dark eyes is not just another bird. There is a mind that can recognize faces, a mind that can build tools, a mind that can plan for tomorrow, a mind that may remember you long after you've forgotten it. And maybe that's the most incredible part of all. For centuries, humans looked at crows and saw symbols of mystery. Only now are we beginning to understand that the mystery was real all along. Not because crows are magical, but because nature created a genius with feathers, and it has been hiding in plain sight the entire time.